Good morning. Hey, please stand with me if you are able for the reading of God's word from Matthew 11:27-30. Jesus resumed talking to the people, but now tenderly, the Father has given me all these things to do and say. This is a unique father-son operation coming out of the Father and Son intimacies and knowledge. No one knows the Son the way the Father does, nor the Father the way the Son does. But I'm not keeping it to myself. I'm ready to go over it line by line with anyone willing to listen. Are you tired, worn out, burnt out, even on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Amen? God bless the reading of his word. You may be seated. Lisa and I have had a fabulous time being here at CLC this weekend, and we got to spend Friday and Saturday with a really wonderful group of people working on becoming more intentional in their relationships and in their closest relationships. And I got to say, I don't know what people were expecting, but it was really fun to see single folks and young married couples with or without children, single parents, and even folks in their 60s and 70s all together exploring how can we create thriving families and thriving relationships together. I can't help but show a picture of my family. My wife Lisa is here with me, and we got to teach together this weekend. And we've got 3 young adult kids. Our oldest is Haley. She is 23, graduated from college in May. Yes. And we've got a son named Noah. I call him Bubba because I grew up in Alabama for part of my coming up. He's a big guy, 6'7", and he will be graduating in physics at the San Francisco State in December. And we just found out, we're kind of proud parents because he just got a fellowship to study for a master's degree in physics. And they're going to pay for it all and give him a stipend. And he's going to work in a lab helping create the future for the rest of us. We don't even understand what he does in there. He shoots lasers at things. And the youngest is Isaiah. His nickname's Spanky, and he's like the guy. Our family's a little serious, and he's the one who keeps us smiling and laughing and not being too serious with each other. So it's so great to explore family life, and one of the things that I think we get in this passage is the potential for a freer and lighter life than maybe we're carrying right now. One of my early mentors was somebody by the name of Dallas Willard. And about this passage in particular, he would often say that Jesus is sharing with us a way of life that actually works. It's not just some esoteric message about the afterlife or something cosmic. He's talking about how life actually works and works best. Practical ways for us to find new ways of being human, to live fully with God in God's kingdom. And so in this passage, Jesus is acknowledging, man, many of us feel tired, worn out, weary, burdened by years of living not according to the way of Jesus. But with this passage, Jesus is saying, I have a way for you that is better, that is freer and lighter than any life you would have created for yourself. Come learn to practice my way. And so this morning, I want to try and give you a little taste of some of the things that we got to explore together over the weekend. And I'm just going to mention four things that the gospel invites us into that are newness because Jesus is inviting us into this free and light way. If you want to follow along, there is a half page in your bulletin that will give you a chance to jot some notes and see where I'm going, and it'll keep me on track with the things I'm going to say. So one thing that the gospel invites us into that's freer and lighter is about our relationships with one another, a chance to really care and connect. I love this place from the last book of the Hebrew Bible where the prophet Malachi is predicting what's going to happen when John the Baptist comes and when Messiah comes. And he says he will turn the hearts of parents and elders to their children and the hearts of children to their parents. One thing I'm inspired by about CLC is the way the generations come together. And some people here are single, some people are widowed, some people are raising kids, and together we make up a bigger family together, and we have an opportunity to really learn how to be family and close relationships with each other. Well, this text also suggests that we don't always live in harmony and community with one another. Let's be honest, for most of us, family relationships in particular can be, let's just say, kind of complicated sometimes, right? And that's why some of the teaching of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount was all about how to live in better relationships with one another. When your brother or sister has something against you, go to them and talk to them. Forgive relentlessly. These are some of the tools we have at our disposal. I like to say about our relationships that whatever your relationship experience has been, it's not the end of the story. Many of us here this morning walk with wounds that we've experienced by some of the people who are closest to us in family. And we're longing for healing. Some of us this morning are here with, when we think about our family relationships and closest relationships, we look back with regret. What I think the gospel promises us is that newness can come, and it is never too late. One of the funnest things for us this weekend was one of our sisters that's here in the service this morning she said, I'm 75 years old, and I've had regrets about how I related to the people closest to me, and I've thought, it's too late. I'm just waiting to die. But she said, I feel inspired by these words, by this hope, that it's never too late. That as long as I have breath, there is a vital way for me to be a part of healing and wholeness and God's love for the people that I'm related to, and I'm going to do it. I'm motivated. I've got hope. So there's potential for all of us to change. There's a few years ago, very often a stranger would come to my house. He would walk in the front door, not even knock at the door, and start ordering people around. Why is this backpack here? And why are these dishes on the counter? And pick this up. And my kids and Lisa would think, who is this guy? And what right does he think he has to come in our house and totally wreck the vibe and disturb the peace here? And he would come over and over again and do this. And my kids gave this stranger a nickname. They called him Krabby Dad. And if you're still waking up on a Sunday morning, who we are talking about here, this Krabby Dad guy is me, Mark Scandrette. I'm Krabby Dad. And I would sometimes get like this. Anybody else know what I'm talking about? Krabby Dad, Krabby Mom, Krabby Son, Krabby Daughter. I would, for some reason, just lose it. Feel so anxious, feel so upset, feel stressed, and try and manage my life by managing everybody else around me instead of my own heart. And sometimes in those moments, I could see I'm discouraging my son or my daughter or wrecking things with Lisa. And so I'd cry out, Lord, serenity now. And for some reason, my prayer was never answered. In neurological terms, I'd like blown my top. Like when you get like that, you have no access to your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain where you actually think and are logical. Everything's just fight or flight emotion for me. And along the way, I was in a group, and in that group, we were each talking about the things we struggle with. And so I thought, I really want to work on this. And what I would so often do when I'd blow my top like that is once I got calmed down, I'd go to Lisa and I'd go to our kids, and I would try and make repairs and say, will you please forgive me? Papa was wrong for how I spoke to you or how I treated you. I didn't treat you with tenderness or gentleness. Will you forgive me? But Krabby Dad kept showing up month after month, year after year, and it started getting tiring for everybody just to hear him say sorry. They didn't want to just hear him say sorry. They wanted to have him stop being crabby. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And And I think that part of my struggle was a misunderstanding about how life with God works. I came up thinking that my job is just to say, God, you're the one who brings healing to my life. So I'm going to kick back and wait for you to bring change about in my life. I can't do anything about it. But then I started looking at the scripture, and even this one this morning, noticing Jesus saying in Matthew 11:27, the Father and I, we're in this thing together. We've got this intimacy and this mystery, and we're actually I'm inviting others to have the same kind of connection. And it's sort of like God saying to us, what I long for you to have is to be up in my business, that you participate and cooperate in your healing and in the healing of the world. Dallas Willard, about this, would often say, your life is perfectly designed to get the results that you're achieving. And I started to realize Crabby Dad showing up at my house wasn't an accident. I had practiced getting ready for Crabby Dad to show up for years and years and years. I sort of reverse engineered Crabby Dad as part of this process, and I asked myself, why does Crabby Dad show up at my house? When does it happen? Crabby Dad shows up at my house when Mark Scandrette works too many hours in the day and in the week. Crabby Dad shows up when Mark Scandrette doesn't take a Sabbath day, when he keeps moving. Crabby Dad shows up when Mark Scandrette, because he's working all the time, he feels like he needs to treat himself at night. And so he's eating lots of snacks, and then he stays up late, and he maybe is binge watching a show. I see some nods out here like, you guys know, how do you know this about me? This is very personal information. And then he stays up too late. He gets up the next morning and he's behind, so he doesn't take time to pray or meditate, and he doesn't take time to exercise because he's got to get moving again. And then he fuels himself with more caffeine and more sugary snacks, and the cycle goes and goes. You do that. He does that for a couple of weeks. Sure enough, like clockwork, Crabby Dad shows up. So I realized some things. There's a place in Romans that says, it is my deepest worship to surrender my body back to God and to change the thinking in my mind. So it's like, literally my body, my basal ganglia, the part of my brain had been trained to go in this cycle. And my mind, why is Mark Scandrette working all the time? Because in his mind, what he's been telling himself for years is you're only significant because of what you can do or achieve. But reality is, that's the lie. Reality is you're significant because of who you already are, who before you were born, a beloved child of the creator of the universe. Psalm 8 even says about you and me, not that we're helpless and we can't change, but Psalm 8 says, you and I were made a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned with glory and honor. So when our Creator says, surrender to me, forgive, don't worry, these instructions, he gives them to us because we can. Because we can say yes to God's work in us. So I wanted to say yes, and so I started changing some things. And I told my family, hey, I don't want Crabby Dad to show up anymore. Decrease my caffeine. Decrease my sugary snacks. I put a limit on the number of hours that I would work in a week. And I spent time every day meditating on who I really am as God's beloved child. And I'm really grateful to say that over a few months, Crabby Dad started showing up less and less. And it's not, nobody really missed him, I'll be honest with you. But they did comment, hey, we haven't seen that guy for a while. And if he does ever show up at my house, he usually knocks at the door first, announces himself, and then slips into the bedroom. And doesn't wreck the vibe so much. But what my kids learned from that, and it really stuck with them, is our dad has problems, our dad has struggles, but he can grow and change. And if he can do that, maybe I can grow and change too. It's not too late. We can see healing and wholeness come because God is at work in us, and that we can take new steps. A second thing that the gospel invites us into is to really pursue the things that matter most, to name and choose what it is that matters most. Christopher Dixon is a one-of-a-kind pastor, And he wants to know and really be connected to what's going on here at CLC. And he did a sneaky thing the other day. Yesterday he says to me, hey, I want you to ask folks who are part of this workshop what it is that they think the purpose of CLC is. And I asked everyone, and it's like, they right on top of each other, people started saying, this is what this church is about. It's about healing. It's about inclusion and radical welcome. Everybody's welcome here. It's about loving God and growing. And I was startled by how clearly the people I was with knew what this faith community is about. That didn't happen by accident. People have been articulating it. People have been trying to schedule and plan for it. Jesus knew what his purpose was. In Luke 4, he gets up in the synagogue and he picks up a scroll and he reads a few verses. He says, the Spirit of the Lord is on me because he's anointed me to preach good news to the poor, to give recovery of sight to the blind, to release the oppressed, and to proclaim the year of God's favor on all people. So he says those words, and then he goes out and he walks out that path. It's a powerful step for you and I to name and choose what matters most to us, to agree with God's purposes. One of the best places that we see that is in the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus said, don't worry about your life. Here's what you should be about. Seek first God's kingdom and God's justice. That's what that word righteousness means in the Greek there, God's justice. And all these things will be taken care of. When you probably noticed in the picture that our kids are pretty close together in age. They came fast. They were 1, 2, and 3 in the picture I'm showing you right now. It took us a little while to figure out what was happening, why we kept having babies. And we eventually figured out how to lock it down. But at that time, life was a blur of diaper changes and laundry and who's going to cook the food and do the house repairs and go out and earn some money. And we started to feel like we were just dragged down by the everyday stuff of life. And it's easy for us to get caught up in the particulars and lose sight of the bigger picture. And at that time, one of the best wisdom we were given is a mentor told us, you should sit down and talk about what it is that matters most to you. And I think it was deep inside of us, just like I believe it's really deep inside of you. There are things that really matter to you that the Creator has put in your heart. But until you speak those things to the people you love or live with, they are not able to guide your life. And so we sat down one night after the kids were in bed, and we prayed and we brainstormed, and we came up with what we called our family purpose statement. We said we want to love Creator and creation, nurture healthy family, offer hospitality and care, especially to those who suffer and struggle, use our gifts to serve, and live simply, gratefully, and creatively. I was so excited to get this out and down that I printed it out and I put it on the front door of the house. We put it in the kitchen. We put it on the bedroom mirror so that when we woke up in the morning, we would remember the deeper purpose that our lives were given to us for. And this can be a really powerful activity for each of us to really explore that question together with the people you live and love with. What is it that matters most? I'm going to be honest, though. There are days when I forget about that completely, especially if I get up in the morning and I turn on the news or I jump over to Facebook and start scrolling. And before breakfast, my mind is filled with 1,000 things to worry about, 1,000 things to stress out about, 1,000 things to be jealous of somebody else where they're on vacation right now or what they ate for breakfast at a nice restaurant. And so it's a discipline to say, I'm gonna start with remembering the things that matter most, and then make decisions about my day that move me closer to that. Now, for some people, a friend of ours is raising two young children who have profound difficulties. That they're low functioning on the autism spectrum. And she says, I don't have time for fancy purpose statements. whatever it is for me and my family, it's got to be quick and simple. And I love hers. She said, in our family, we want to pray, be kind, show respect, be grateful, love God and people, and work on ourselves so we have something else to give. I like that. Nice and clear and simple. Sometimes when, to really focus on the things that are most important, we've got to figure out some new rhythms with time and money. And so I'm to my third point here, that the gospel invites us to use time and money wisely and in new ways. You see, how you spend your time is how you spend your life. I know a lot of times, sometimes when I look at what I really want to be about, and then I look at my calendar, they don't match up. Lisa likes to say it like this: the calendar doesn't lie. Whatever you're doing shows what's important to you. And if you're not spending your time on the things that you really long to, you're not really getting to those most important things. How you spend your life is shaped by choices with time and money. And this is why there's so many good instructions in the gospel about our relationship to these things. I'm convinced, like as Lisa and I get a chance to travel all around the country and really around the world. Everywhere we go and talk to families, the number one thing that comes up is they said, what's in between us and the flourishing life that God desires for us is that we're too busy. And we're always running around and running after things. And I'm convinced that if we're not intentional about how we spend time and money, the forces of a consumptive and materialistic culture will make most of our decisions for us, will wear us out and keep us from the things that matter most. This is why Jesus talks so much about these things in the Gospels. In one place he says, a person's life doesn't consist in the abundance of their possessions. It's not about what you own. In another place he says, don't worry or be anxious about these things. Paul had a really interesting take on this. He was talking to his young Padawan or apprentice Timothy, and he said, Tim, if we have food and clothes, we'll be content with that. So I'm looking out on a crowd of people this morning, and gratefully, everybody has clothes on. Most of us look better with our clothes on. And so we got that taken care of. I'm guessing that you were able to have a little breakfast this morning, or that you anticipate being able to have some lunch today. So we got that taken care of. Now we can get on with the more important things about joining God in the remaking of the world. This was a radical message that Jesus shared with his disciples. In one place he said, sell your possessions and give to the poor. Don't run after the things that other people run after. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. It was a normal thing. When people woke up to God's reality, they would fundamentally change their relationship with their finances. A few years ago, Lisa and I had a chance to be in a group where we did some experimenting with this. I don't have time to tell you the whole story this morning, but it's in my book, Practicing the Way of Jesus. A group of us said, what if we sold or gave away half of what we own in the next 8 weeks? And gave those resources to help the poorest people in the world? What might we learn? So I can tell you just a little bit. One thing we learned is, man, we didn't miss the half that we gave away. The other thing we learned is that we looked back at some of those things and we thought about why we bought them. And it was because we were trying to fill a hole in our hearts. Some of us said, man, when I bought that was retail therapy going on. I was looking for some little hit of something to make me feel a little bit better for a little while. Jesus invites us into a newness of life with these things. And sometimes that means making trade-offs. Maybe we've gone a certain piece down the way, and we go, do I want to keep going this way anymore? With a little sadness, I had a couple come up to us after we were talking about this one time not too long ago, and they said, when our kids were coming up, we thought, man, we want to give them the best childhood we can, and so we bought the biggest house we could with the biggest and best yard. But man, what we didn't know is how much time and energy it was going to take to maintain all that. And so we spent the last 20 years mowing a big lawn and we're fixing and piddling in the garden. And we just imagined all these great times we were going to have with the kids in that environment and offering hospitality. But instead, we were just working. And if we could do it over again, I think we would have gone a little simpler and smaller so that we would have had more time and energy for those deeper things. A friend of mine made a bold decision that he told me about. He said, my commute and my work time was taking up most of my day. I barely get a chance to see my kids. And I thought, this isn't working anymore. And he made a big trade-off. He said, I'm gonna take a job that maybe pays less, but I get to work close to home. And it gave him that margin he needed to really be the father that he wanted to be. So we're invited to consider, what are those trade-offs? What's going to help free us up for the deeper life? And finally, the gospel invites us to join in God's mission, to reach out together. We're invited to consider, what are the great aches of the world? Where is God's heart breaking right now, and how can our hearts be broken as well? You're probably just as aware as I am of the great struggles that are going on in our world right now. We have an opium epidemic all throughout our country that's getting a lot of attention in the media right now. Unprecedented numbers of people without homes, struggling with mental health and addiction that are our neighbors. I see them all around Fayetteville as I've driven around the last couple of days. We're a divided country right now with so much antagonism. We have a huge struggle about how we welcome neighbors, refugees, people of other religions, how we get to a place of real racial equality and the bigger family we all are together. And so we have the opportunity, I think, if we figure out what's most important, name what matters most, we get alignment with time and money, it's going to free us up to have the margin in our lives to not be so busy that we can't pay attention to the stranger, the orphan, the widow, the least of these. I've been inspired to see my wife Lisa like this lately. She is a person who tries to live a little slower so that she can pay attention. We live in an inner city neighborhood, and not too long ago, a young man was shot and killed in a gang warfare in a park near us. And his relative was heartbroken, doesn't have a home, but drove her truck and parked it in front of our house. So it's kind of cool when you live in an inner city. You don't have to go real far to reach out, you know? And all we had to do is walk out the front door, and there she is. Lisa's offering a cup of water, a shoulder to cry on, helping her buy cookies for the wake. And I think for Lisa, that opportunity came because she was moving slow enough that she could be awake to the needs around her. Try that this week. Just pray, God, let me be your hands and feet to somebody who needs wholeness and healing. And then wait for it and watch. You're going to have an opportunity this week to take that step. So, in closing, I got a homework assignment for you that I hope you'll take seriously. This week, have a conversation with the people you love and do life with about what matters most and how you can thrive together. Maybe there's a crabby mom or dad that lives at your house and you need to make some repairs and take some new steps. Or maybe you want to speak out loud. I was just poking over and I saw your purpose statement, Christopher, that you guys have for the Dixon family. Inspiring. So maybe you want to take a step to talk about that stuff. Take that next step. What's so exciting about learning to practice the way of Jesus is that we're being invited into a way of life that truly is rest and peace. And what's radical is that Jesus is inviting us to have the same relationship with the Father that he has, to really find our true home. And I love this place from John where he says, live in me, make your home in me. Whatever we need to thrive is available to us right now. Take a deep breath right now. Take a deep breath. Breathe in, breathe out. Your Creator, the one in whose image you are made, is closer now than your very breath. And if we can learn to live in that consciousness, it changes everything. And we join the lineage of those who have gone before us. our mothers and fathers, aunties and uncles, grandmas and grandpas, who have been on that same journey to be able to say, Lord, you have been our dwelling place in every generation. It is the greatest task of our lives to finally come home and realize that everything we need is here because God is here closer than our very breath. Close your eyes and pray with me. Lord, we struggle to keep a grasp on what's most real and most important. And it makes us tired and weary and crabby. And we need you. We need to come back home to you. Teach us to make our home in you and to really dwell, not just in worship, but 24/7, dwell in your presence that makes all things new. Amen.